our timer is not customizable with slots, so let's make some customization. uh, how to customize, how to make a component, a web component, customizable is using slots. So therefore let's just use the default slot for the title. Therefore, if someone wants to replace this is just the default implementation. Just to someone want to change, it can be changed with the slot, and then maybe we can also add an additional slot, maybe after the span, something like slot, and then this time we should give a name, because we can only have only one default slot, that is no name slot. It is the name could be something like after in our case, and then again, so this is enough for our purpose. So the default slot is just before, and then the other. Let's save it and check out how we can use it in our index HTML. Here is our timer, and that's where we can sandwich into here. We can implement our slots, and then let's use a simple bold section B, and then we don't have to define for the slot name here, because this is what I'm doing for the before, and just use it timer, a timer, just to say it, a timer, and whatever, and save it. And here you go. A bold a timer is the new title. So this is how we can use this default slot. And if we want to add additional text, of course we can enter text here, but if we want to make it as part of our timer solution, we can use it as just to show for the sake of fun. Let's make this like another span and slot. Of course you can style it whatever way. Slot is after, this is our after slot, and then give it milliseconds, millis. Control S, and here you go. Okay, I'm not sure if giving a space here, yeah, it's retain, excellent. So this is the way that when the designer of the web component properly design the application with slots that could be customized like so. And this is even so that we can even add a timer within the timer too. And maybe let's give into the after section, maybe somewhere here, it really doesn't matter, span, no, so we don't even need, I don't even need span, just simply my timer, yes, and another my timer, and defining slot after, the same slot. I wonder if it's going to work. And then save it. Here you go. It is displayed just after. Of course, we can customize it with the default slot, something like another timer. Yes, another timer, and then let's start it. Run. And here you go. We have another timer running. Now we have two timer, and one of the timer is sandwiched within one of the slots. So I think this is pretty nifty, and your options are almost endless. Using slots and instantiation of the slots with this technique. Excuse me. So the next step would be to make a button here which stops these slots. Okay, go to the elements. Let's just add here button. Stop. Okay, and then the big question, how can we reference a timer which is not part of our component? Because when we have a timer, of course we can use a timer anywhere here. Let's just my timer. By the way, when I am editing these HTML tagged templates, then there is an excellent extension. It is called lit plugin or something. Yes, this is the lit plugin, and this is what I am using. And this lit plugin, it's far from perfect, but it's good enough that to help you editing components, because as you have seen, it automatically recognized that I have and suggest my element and my timer. Let's select my timer, and also, if I'm not mistaken, it also shows that the run, it recognizes that it has a property of run. So let's use this run, and yep, therefore I'm including a timer after the button, so it would show up somewhere here. Let's just save it. Yes, here you go. This, when I press this button to stop this component, is quite that easy, since we can set a reference here. Let's do it using the lit infrastructure, and one of the possibility is just to use for now let's use the query. Query is a fancy tool that in our application, of course you have a number of other options, but let's use it now. That is this again, a decorator, a query decorator, and then within the query, this is the same as the query selector. You can define the selector name. In our case, this is the my timer. That is it. We have also query all, but now I'm going to include only one timer here, and then this query would return a value, and then let's call it my timer, and its type is HTML element, as usual, element, HTML element, and then it is complaining that the property has no initializer because I have only two options, either to define that is or undefined. In that case, it's TypeScript is very happy because that in that case it don't have to be defined. Or another shorthand, almost the same as that, I enter here a this is TypeScript, enforce that, hey guys, this is guaranteed to have a value because I'm sure that I know what I am doing. So my timer, so this definitely will have a value. So when you have a query, then it automatically assigns to this value, therefore you can reference it. This is a convenience. Of course, you could do it just regular JavaScript programming. And then when the button is clicked, the stop button is clicked, let's just create a event handler. The event handler has this machinery. Let's just make a lambda function, a fat arrow function for the event handler. So what is we can have here, that is this dot my timer. Okay, what can I do with my timer? I can simply set attribute run to false. But this is unfortunately not the proper way. The real way with Boolean attribute is remove attribute. That's the best way. And then here you just simply enter run. This is our, yeah, this is typical JavaScriptish. Normally I hate this kind of trick, that is magic strings hanging around, but anyway, for this demonstration this should work fine. And hopefully when I click this stop, yep, it stopped this timer. Okay, and then but the other timers, I still have no clue how to do it. There is another possibility which can be done with the directives ref, which works very similar to in React the refs. I'm just check out the lit documentation for the ref, how to use refs, but this query for this demonstration is okay and fine. Let's just change the stop to stop and start. How to do it? For that purpose, let's just have a property on our own too, or of course I can also query the attribute of this button. So that is when it is stopped. Let me just give some space here. So when it is stopped, check out, use the value like this. If this dot my timer get attribute So if this attribute is defined, it will return a true string or something like that, or if it's not defined, that it will return and then this should be run. So if it is running then the text should be stop, otherwise it should be start or run, even better. Yes, this is how we can define it. Let's see if it works. This is the first time I've done this. Oops. This uncaught in promise type cannot read properties of. Yep. So this error I didn't want to do. This wasn't intentional, but of course after a couple of minutes of thinking I was pretty sure what was the reason. It's quite typical. So when this render is running and then when I am referencing to this my timer and that timer hasn't even been created because this timer is just coming later. So it worked perfectly fine during the click event handling because at that time, however, when I am rendering the first time this component tree, this is not initialized. So what we can do to decide if the timer should be stopped or running, so we have to maintain also our state for the application. Maybe there are other possibilities, so therefore let's just introduce a state, and state is also coming from this machinery, this toolset, the lit toolset. State is run again, and in our situation run should be, let's assume that it is true by default. Actually it really doesn't matter, you will see why. So when when it is true, and then this is our internal value, therefore we can, I can just change run if our timer, internal timer is running, then I can stop, and then otherwise I just Control S. Yes, here you go. Therefore when I'm starting timer, I'm pretty sure that it is running, so therefore it's going to work great. And also let me show you another trick. This is an HTML functions service. That is, if you want to make it consistent, this dot run, here you go, it is running. So when I just change it to false, here you go, it is not running. And of course this also works brilliantly, therefore I can press run. However, I haven't implemented so far run and because the only thing I implemented here is the remove attribute, and that what I can define here, that if this dot run that is we are running, that is our timer is running, then stop it. Otherwise, this dot my timer dot set attribute run, and let's define a value. Actually really doesn't matter, true. This is one of the possibility. So this way I can modify, but actually this is not the way when we have a state like run, and then when we have a property like so. So the only thing we should do at this moment, let me just show you without how I can do it, because then I have to change also the run. So we don't need this anymore. The only thing is that to simply this dot run equals to this dot run and negated. Hopefully this is what I'm expecting to work, because in that case this my timer should inherit immediately this value. Let's just change it, Ctrl S. Yes, because the default is false, and run. Let's just change it. Oh, this run equals to this run. Okay, in my application, so when I start something like true, so when it is running and when I press stop, it works perfectly fine. But when I press run, as seen, the internal property is changed to run, but the timer is still not willing to get restarted. So therefore the state management in this application is totally fine, but maybe there is something wrong in the my timer. Let's jump over to the my timer and to check what's happening here. What is happening, and that's very important, that how this object is working. So this is just a function, this count up, this is just a function, a kind of factory function which creates a generator object, and this is the generator object, and this generator object, like a promise, it provides yields, but when it is completed, then this object is done like a promise. When a promise is returned with either resolved or other issues, then it cannot be restarted. So this is exactly the same. So that is, our timer is not restartable at the moment. So how can we make it restartable? To make it restartable, we need a special event handling, that is when the run is changed to to running, I mean when this property is available. And how this event can be done in the good old custom event machinery coming from the browser has a solution for that, and then this solution is also available in a lit element as an override, and that it is called attribute changed callback. Normally you don't have to call it, but this is a situation when you cannot get rid of this. That is name. If the name of the attribute, this is a string, and then the old value is, as I mentioned, every attribute is just string, and value, this is the new value, then a string. So this is the signature, and then here, of course, because lit element is using behind the scene, we use super dot attribute chained callback with the same parameters like name and old value and the value itself. And then this is always important. When you override something, the render is an exception. You should always call, this is the best practice. Even, of course, the best practice would be for me just to call render, but render is a special situation, is exclusively meant only for the components. But when you have another base component, the situation could be different. This is typical object-oriented programming, when to call back the super and when not to call back. The best practice is always call back either the beginning. So when we call back the attribute changed, then the lit element machinery will have an option to set this property accordingly, and therefore we can now trigger that. That is, if this run is true, then we reinitialize, we create practically a new object, that is this dot timer equals to the this dot counter up. Yep, so this, remember, this count up function return creates an object, and then this object is referenced with this timer, which is also, the timer is a state. Therefore we restarted the yielding, that is the machinery, the yield machinery into our application. This is practically how, one possibility, how can you stop it. Let's just check out if I can stop it. Yes, I can stop it, and check out if I can run it. Brilliant. I can restart, stop, restart. So this is then, we have here again the summary. We have a state for the timer running. Of course, I can also rename it that run timer, run our timer, just save it, stop, start, stop, and run. And that's how you can handle that. And then this is the way. Remember, when you have a Boolean property, you practically forget about this false and true thing. That for a Boolean attribute is either present on the line or either is missing. If it's present, it's always true. If you want to make it false, just simply remove it. That's how it works. So that's why this special syntax that automatically HTML, this machinery, removes this attribute if this expression is falsy. Yep, now we have the stop and start machinery. And in the next iteration, I'm going to explain how can we stop and control these timers that are actually outside of the scope of the visible scope, they are dynamically included as part of the My element via slots. So these elements here are called slotted elements. So that is, how can we control and monitor the slotted elements? That's going to be the topic of the next section.